Coming up, the Celtics sweep the Nets and the Raptors force Game 6 with the Sixers. This is Locked On Now NBA.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Now NBA, local experts weighing in on the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. We've got our Locked On NBA hosts here to recap everything from playoff action on Monday. We're going to start out with the Nets season coming to an end last night in Brooklyn in our biggest game.
The biggest game.
The Celtics pulled off the only sweep in the first round after they took down the Nets on Monday night, and they made it look pretty easy, taking down one of the most physically talented teams in the league. Locked On Celtics tells you how they got it done.
Hey there, John Corrales here from Barclays Center after the Boston Celtics 116-112 win over the Brooklyn Nets in Game 4. That is a sweep for the Celtics, a team that people said made a mistake by trying to win and play the Brooklyn Nets. In the end, they overcame the one great Kevin Durant game. Came down to the end where Durant actually missed the second free throw and then missed a three-pointer late that could have tied the game, and Celtics held on, made their free throws down the stretch. Jayson Tatum fouled out of this. There's going to be some talk about that, but I'm glad that the Celtics won and we don't have to focus on that. Great defense again from Grant Williams. Great, other than the fouls, great game from Jayson Tatum. And overall, just a great game plan for the Boston Celtics, who win this in 4 straight. Now they're on to play the Milwaukee Bucks. Celtics really, this game turned around in the second quarter, I think. They were tied 30-30. Kevin Durant had a corner three-pointer that went halfway down. Ime Udoka stepped out onto the court to call the timeout, and then the ball bounced out and he had to run back off to the sideline and play resumed. That was the only time in this game that Brooklyn had a chance to win, to take a lead with the ball. And after that, the Celtics just kept holding them off. Brooklyn made their runs, but the Celtics always kept them at least a couple points off, 2, 3, 4, 5 points off. So the D holds on, not the prettiest thing, but it's all about winning and advancing. So now, presumably, the Milwaukee Bucks are next. The Celtics now get to relax a little bit, take a few days off, and get Robert Williams reacclimated. He didn't have a great game in this. Get him back to where he's supposed to be. I'll talk about it on the Locked On Celtics podcast, so make sure you are subscribed and watch the show on YouTube.
Brooklyn fans were thinking about a title run a couple of weeks ago, but now they're eliminated. Locked On Nets looks back at this complicated season for a team that was supposed to be a title contender.
Oh, what could have been. The Nets season draws to a close. One of the craziest, most frustrating seasons maybe in the history of basketball. A team that went in as the title contender only to have basically everything along the way completely and utterly derail. And it couldn't have ended any other way except being swept by the Celtics in the first round of the series. The Nets put up a little bit of a fight near the end. It was essentially a foregone conclusion around where this series was going. Even with Jayson Tatum fouling out at the end, the Nets were not able to overcome what the Celtics did to them basically all series. They finally got a game here from Kevin Durant, 39 points on 13 of 31 shooting. It just wasn't enough. 116-112. Boston beats Brooklyn. Brooklyn is out of the playoffs. First team eliminated, only team that is swept. We are going to be talking about it all over on the Locked On Nets podcast.
The Toronto Raptors took another step forward as they try to come back from down 3-0 to the 76ers. This series is headed back to Toronto with a chance to force a Game 7 at home, and Locked On Raptors is excited to be back in it.
We've got ourselves a series. Sean Woodley here from Locked On Raptors to break down the Toronto Raptors 103-88 victory over the Philadelphia 76ers in Game 5 of their first round series in Philadelphia on Monday night. A elimination game that the Raptors had to win, and they did in pretty dominating fashion. They led pretty much coast to coast in this one. In fact, they led coast to coast in this one. And the big takeaway here is that the Raptors' vision of everybody being 6'9" on the floor at the same time is working, and the Sixers have yet to figure it out. The Raptors have more or less solved this series over the last 3 games, dating back even to their Game 3 loss, where a poor Sixers performance was saved by some incredible Joel Embiid shot making. But the Raptors have had the run of play here ever since, and their system of just long length, flying everywhere, extra help, long double teams coming towards Joel Embiid has really bothered them. They've left James Harden in single coverage for much of this series as well, in the last 3 games at least, and that has really worked for them because James Harden just ain't cutting it right now, and they look like a brilliant basketball team. And also, huge credit to Pascal Siakam, who has taken over the mantle as point guard for the Raptors. No Fred VanVleet for the second half of game number 4, and he was not available tonight. Probably won't be available for game 6 on Thursday either, but Siakam, operating as essentially the point guard for the Raptors, just pulled the strings all night long, knowing exactly which guy to pull up, which matchup to attack, which guy to find with a mismatch of the post or wherever it might have been. He was marvelous. 23 points, 10 boards, 7 assists for Siakam on 10 of 17 shooting, just 2 turnovers in the entire game. And again, he was essentially the point guard from start to finish for Toronto in this one. So it goes back to Toronto on Thursday. Obviously still a lot of work left for the Raptors to do here, but this is very much a series now, and the Sixers are the ones now on the back foot and have to make an adjustment going into game 6 to try to get the Raptors off of this great groove they've found over the last couple of games. I'll have more on this game broken down on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Raptors. Be sure to tune in.
Luka Doncic played his first playoff game at home on Monday, and he put up 33 points to boot in front of the home crowd, helped beating the Jazz. Locked On Mavericks goes over the win that left Dallas in full control of this series.
The Dallas Mavericks get their 3rd win in the series at home. Nick Engstead from the Locked On Mavericks podcast here, and the stats in this game honestly don't matter. Almost a 30-point win for the Dallas Mavericks. Their defense has absolutely been smothering. They have been incredible on the defensive end, really tied together, doing a great job hedging, doing a great job of trapping when needed, doubling when needed. And the only things that the Jazz could get going were Rudy Gobert, second chance points, or stuff around the basket, or Jordan Clarkson just throwing up a prayer of a shot and hitting a lot of them. The Mavs defense was incredible, and Luka Doncic at times in this game just toying with the Jazz. I mean, doing things that we don't usually see even in a regular season. Blocked Jordan Clarkson on a 3-point attempt in the corner. Runs down to the other end of the floor and hits a pull-up transition 3. The Mavs were running when they got rebounds. This is something we haven't seen from the Mavs much this season, but Luka Doncic was leading the way, scoring when he needed to, hitting big threes. The Mavs didn't even shoot well from 3 and still got a big win. They go up 3-2, go back to Utah for Game 6, and we'll see what happens.
The Jazz are now a loss away from falling in the first round for the 3rd time in 4 years. Locked On Jazz tries to find the answers with Utah's season now on the line.
Pivotal Game 5 becomes a blowout as the Utah Jazz get hammered by the Dallas Mavericks 102-77. I'm David Locke of Locked On Jazz. The Jazz did not hit anything to open the night. They got a bunch of good looks. They went 0 for 7 from 3 early. They went 6 of 20 in the first quarter, but they got it back to within 2 points at 30-28 with 9:24 left in the second. And then it just was over. A 22-8 run by the Mavericks that gave them a 16-point halftime lead that eventually expanded out to a 33-point lead by Dallas in that third quarter. The Jazz at halftime had 2 3-pointers, one by Juancho Hernan-Gomez and one by Daniel House. Royce O'Neal would add one in the third, and that's it for the night. The Jazz trail the series 3-2, and just to make it better, or not, Donovan Mitchell may have strained a hamstring. We'll see his status coming up. For more, go to Locked On Jazz and the Locked On Podcast Network.
That's all for today on Locked On Now NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you check out Locked On NBA and your team's Locked On podcast during these playoff runs. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Now.